Hi, Paulina. Let's see what you did in this latest set of essays. We've got movie preferences. Here's what you wrote. The bar chart illustrates the data uh, for 6 favorite movie genres among no you, male and female young adults internationally, double L. Overall, the most popular movie type is comedy. Both men and women gave it the highest total rate at 282. Also, both genders gave low tolerance to animation, has the lowest total number at 117. Okay, a lot of stuff to talk about. So, first of all, yes to talking about comedy, absolutely appropriate. Um, I don't agree with your comment about animation because if you look at the men, uh, romantic movies were even lower. But so it's a little inaccurate, okay? But it's not just that. There are two other problems. We don't use this expression low tolerance. And also, since this is your overview, you shouldn't put any data. There should be no numbers in your overview. It's just trying to show us the biggest trends, the things that are most obvious, without actually including any details. When you start to include details in your overview, then it's no longer an overview, but a detailed paragraph. So, what I would have probably said here is something like this. Overall, the most popular movie type is comedy. Both men and women gave it the highest preference. However, the least favorite movie genre varied between the genders. Okay? So that's how I would have done that. Let's keep going. While both genders agreed about their favorite movie type, they gave, here it is. Good. This is exactly what you could have put in your overview. Okay. So, but here you're going to detail. So let's see. While both genders agreed about the favorite movie type, they gave a different opinion about the least, Least, favorite genre. There are only 31 males who prefer romantic movies, S, and 54 females, S, answered positively, LY, about animation. Okay, so let's talk about something else here. The most logical place to start with your details is with the highest. So I actually would have talked about comedy here, but then here I would have gone into detail about it. So would have said that it was consistent, it was the most popular among both, with men at 145 and women with 8 less. And that's it. Okay. So again, no detail here, just kind of like again, just like an overview of what the trend is. And then here you actually talk about the highest number in detail. After that, it would be okay to have a sentence, like to have this paragraph here. Okay? So let's see what else you said. Men prefer watching comedy and action. Here you need a semicolon. They rated them at 145 and 137 accordingly. At the same time, young male adults expressed a particular low interest in romantic movies. You already said that here. I don't know why you're saying it again. Only at 31. Other movie types have been rated by men similarly between 63 to 73. That's smart. On the other hand, females answered relatively 1L similarly about 4 genres: action, animation, drama, and horror, without showing strong disfavor to any certain movie type. The rates are between 54 to 86. Okay. Young women showed the most interest in comedy and romantic movies. Okay. So I agree with the information that you've included. I mean, you included everything essentially, and that was smart because there's really not a lot going on here. There's only 12 pieces of information. So you probably do have to include them all. I'm not really happy with the order, with the organization of this. That's what, for me, needs a lot of work here. So it's essentially an issue of coherence and cohesion. But it's also an issue of task achievement because, as I said, when you include detail in your overview, it is no longer an overview. Just because you use the word overall, that's not enough to make it an overview. Okay? So, again, I should say one thing about this. There are a handful of ways to organize this. I'm going to give you a couple of suggestions. Okay? So, as I said before, fine introduction here. Just talk about how comedy was the most popular, but the least popular really varied, okay, between the two genders. Then, in your next paragraph, and as you probably know, we recommend two detailed paragraphs. There are a couple of ways to do it. So, one way to do it is to have one paragraph that just focuses on the men and another paragraph that focuses just on the women. When you write the paragraph about the women, it's important to make some connections to the previous paragraph about the men's figures. So, as I said, that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to talk about the highs and talk about the lows. So, you talk about comedy, you talk about romantic, you talk about action. Yeah, actually, you know what? You talk about those three highs essentially. So, the top two for men, the top two for women, and yeah, and obviously, you would talk about like how this compares to the. Does that make sense? So, in other words, I'm saying in one paragraph, I would include one, two, three, four, five, six pieces of data. And then in my other paragraph, I would talk about horror, drama, and animation. Does that make sense? So, that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is just to divide it men, the paragraph about men, and then the paragraph about women. So those are two effective ways. It really depends on how you want to do it. Okay, so why don't we take a look now at your task 2? All right, again, please. Here it is. All right, this is discussing the advantages and disadvantages of travel. Great. Where is your conclusion? Okay, make sure you leave a space, like a whole line. Look, right like that. So make sure you do that. Um, because if you don't, then it's going to look like you are missing a paragraph and like you're missing a conclusion. So you don't want that because that's going to lower your coherence and cohesion score. All right, let's see what you said. Nowadays, moving around local and international destinations has become, okay, or is becoming, because it's nowadays, is becoming increasingly popular. Some people argue this tendency brings many negative aspects, while others believe that positive consequences with a C of it are more important. This essay will discuss both sides of that tendency. Fine. The popularity of travel, you don't even need to say traveling. The popularity of travel has several significant advantages, such as an educational effect and a creation of new working places. People travel for many different reasons: holidays, working purposes, family connections, and even immigration. Visiting new countries new opens them to new cultures and languages, allowing them to observe and explore traditions and lifestyles which benefit and educate people at the same time. Moreover, enlarging demand of domestic and international travel leads to developing new ways of transportation. In cities, public transport. In cities, the public transport system with a Y is constantly improving, not upgrading. That's the wrong word. And that means that more and more people get involved in it. New positions are opening in the public transport field. Okay, careful. Here you want a linker, something like as a result, new positions are opening in the public transport field. Furthermore, the possibility to travel around the world easily encourages people, to spend their holiday abroad. That boosts the economy of those, I guess I understand what you're saying. Of how about just popular tourist countries? That's even better. The economies of popular tourist countries. Okay. Uh, fine. It's fine. I thought that this was maybe not great. Um, I thought that the argument was maybe a little weak. Um, but it's fine. Because you're talking about like public transport. So I don't know. It's fine. Like I said, like we always say, IELTS is not an ideas essay. What am I saying? It's not an ideas test. It's a language test. Okay? So it's fine. What always concerns me and what I'm always kind of like hesitant about, and why I really kind of think about this twice and three times with students, is I don't want the examiner thinking that you came up with an idea because of some lack of language skills. Do you understand what I mean? So it's one thing if these are your ideas and that's fine, you support them, you have the language to support them, and that's great. It's quite another thing, however, if the inflexibility of a candidate's language doesn't allow them to potentially say or express ideas that they otherwise would have said. I hope that made sense. I'm not really entirely sure that it did. But so that's why I'm always like hesitant about things like this. But I think you're fine, Paulina. Okay. So let's just leave it and let's go to your next paragraph. On the other hand, travel, again, you don't really need the ing. A lot of people like it. It's not necessary. Travel is both a verb, it's also a noun, so just leave it. On the other hand, travel has some intense demerits. Firstly, favorite holiday, no S here, destinations. Why? Because holiday is acting like an adjective. Even though it's a noun, it's acting here like an adjective, and so you do not put an S after it. So, become overcrowded, and that puts heavy pressure on nature, no the, and the ecological system there. So your the didn't belong in front of nature, belonged here. For example, after the Fifi Islands became famous worldwide, word order, they attracted hundreds of thousands of people annually, and the ecosystem was damaged severely. The Thai government, no land, just Thai as an adjective, had to prohibit tourists from visiting one of the islands for a decade to preserve no the and restore the corals and vegetation which with an H were destroyed. Secondly, traveling could be expensive and not affordable for everyone, especially plane grammar. Especially plane tickets. Uh okay. Especially plane ticket no S, prices, which rose dramatically in the last 3 years since the air travel industry started to recover after the pandemic. Okay. So a lot of people like to mention this idea of like, oh, well, travel is expensive, therefore it's bad. That's not what we mean by a disadvantage of travel. Okay. The fact that something is expensive isn't necessarily a disadvantage, especially when the essay allows you to talk about domestic travel as well. So, um, what am I suggesting? I'm suggesting that when you think about the disadvantages of travel, think about in what ways can people traveling either in the same country or in another country, in what ways could that potentially be bad? And one of the ways that I always like to remind students is that think about the environmental um, damage. You already talked about those islands. You could have also talked about jet fuel. You could have talked about like cars, so any sort of travel requires some sort of fossil fuel usage unless you're using like an electric car or something. So many times travel, one of its disadvantages is the environmental effect that it has. Okay. Another thing, Yeah, I mean, just going off of what you wrote here, you could have also talked about the effects of over tourism, which you kind of talked about. But think about places like Venice in Italy. Think about places like Santorini in Greece, where governments are actually creating measures to stop or to cap the number of people that go there because it's just intolerable living there. So these are some of the things you could have thought about in terms of disadvantages that a lot of times the place no longer is what you initially went there for. You know what I mean? Like it loses some of its beauty, it loses some of its purity, and just becomes basically like a theme park, okay, which caters to tourists. So this is just some of the stuff you could think about. I'm not saying you have to, but I just would like to give you some ideas about how you could potentially talk about this, okay? All right, great. So go ahead, correct these. Let's see more work. Keep at it. Let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to include anything you want in your email when you bring when you send up your when you send your next essays. Okay, I'll check it out and I'll be waiting for your next set. Good luck.